If the United States expands its military budget to $1.5 trillion, it will have to spend about $4 billion every single day. When we hear those numbers, we picture hangars full of brand new fighter jets, tanks, and missiles. But the military actually operates more like a massive, self-contained company town. It is the single largest employer in the world and one of the largest landlords. A huge portion of that budget goes toward everyday human needs. It pays for housing, healthcare, pensions, even subsidized grocery stores and bowling alleys for their families. This infrastructure stretches across the entire planet. There are roughly 750 military installations scattered across the globe, requiring regular shipments of American food and fuel. Maintaining this network and paying personnel costs about $352 billion a year, exceeding the entire economic output of Portugal. Before the Pentagon buys a single weapon, it has already spent a median-sized nation's total wealth just paying the rent and keeping the lights on. Once those massive bills for daily operations are paid, the military finally goes shopping for equipment. And the way they buy those weapons is where the costs really accelerate. Take the F-35 fighter jet. When the contract was first awarded back in 2001, the government projected the entire program would cost around $200 billion. Since then, the estimated lifetime cost for those jets has climbed to over $2 trillion, a tenfold increase over the original estimate. To see how a price tag multiplies like that, imagine hiring a contractor to renovate your home. But instead of agreeing on a set price, you promise to cover whatever the project ends up costing, plus a guaranteed 10% profit margin on top. If your contractor makes a mistake or buys expensive materials, the base cost expands. Because their profit is a percentage of that total, their payout gets bigger too. In this system, there's no reason to be efficient. The government calls this a cost-plus contract. In a normal market, you would simply fire that contractor and hire someone cheaper. But the military cannot do that. Decades of mergers have consolidated 51 major defense companies down to just 5. If the military needs an F-35, there is exactly one company on Earth that builds it. The result is a system where the government is forced to buy from a monopoly, using a contract structure that actually rewards budget overruns. It seems like a simple problem to solve. If a program is inefficient or overpriced, why don't politicians just cancel it? The defense companies have a survival strategy for that. When building a new weapon, they deliberately scatter the manufacturing jobs and suppliers across the country. The F-35 program, for instance, employs suppliers in 45 different states. If a lawmaker tries to vote against an overpriced jet, they are effectively voting to fire hundreds of workers in their own district. That makes these programs virtually immortal, regardless of how much they cost. While the budget remains tied up in these older programs, the technology of warfare is shifting toward a new generation of equipment. The military is now trying to fund thousands of space satellites, AI drone swarms, and a massive replacement of the aging nuclear arsenal, like the B-21 Raider seen here. Pushing the budget to $1.5 trillion was supposed to cover these new technologies, but the original plans to pay for it, like new tariffs and efficiency savings, have largely collapsed. Without that revenue, the only way to pay for this high-tech expansion is to borrow the money, adding to a national debt that already sits near $39 trillion. By refusing to cut legacy programs while simultaneously buying a futuristic arsenal, the U.S. is effectively putting a new, unproven military on a national credit card. We have seen this specific pattern before. Superpowers like Rome and the Soviet Union reached points where their economic foundations began to weaken, and they responded by increasing their military spending to compensate. In the 1980s, even as the Soviet Union's share of global wealth shrank, they panicked and spent up to 20% of their total output on the world's most expensive security system. These charts show a similar trend today. The United States produces about 24% of the world's wealth, but it still accounts for 40% of all global military spending. This growing mismatch is a signal historians recognize. When a nation's economic influence starts to slip, it often doubles down on military power to maintain the global position it can no longer support through its economy alone. If cheap drones and AI can destroy targets for a few $100s, why are we still spending billions on massive, traditional fighter jets? And is it even possible to break up the Big Five defense monopolies to make weapon prices competitive again? Ultimately, we have to ask how much of our $39 trillion national debt is tied directly to these guaranteed profit defense contracts.